Victoria Sterling thought she knew everything about her twin children until she saw their exact doubles begging for food outside their school. Same faces, same height, same everything. Except these children were dressed in rags and looked starved. When the poor twins spoke, they said something that made Victoria's blood run cold. "You stole our real family." What happened next destroyed everything she believed about her perfect life. But before we dive into this incredible story, we need your help with something urgent. We're challenging ourselves to reach 1,000 subscribers in just 3 days, and we're counting on amazing viewers like you to make it happen. If you want to know what happens next and how this shocking mystery unfolds, hit that subscribe button and help us achieve the impossible. Now, to understand how Victoria's nightmare began, we need to go back to where it all started. Victoria Sterling sat in her penthouse office overlooking Manhattan, reviewing quarterly reports from her tech empire. At 35, she had built Sterling Innovations from a small startup into a billion-dollar company. She commanded boardrooms filled with men twice her age and had graced the cover of Forbes 3 times. But despite all her success, her greatest pride was her twin children, Mason and Madison. The twins were everything Victoria had dreamed of when she and her late husband David had struggled for years to conceive. Born after expensive fertility treatments and the finest prenatal care money could buy, they were now 6 years old and absolutely perfect. Mason was already reading at a high school level, and Madison could solve math problems that challenged most adults. They attended the most exclusive private school in Manhattan, had personal tutors for violin and French, and lived in a world where every need was anticipated before they even knew they wanted something. Mrs. Sterling, her assistant, knocked softly on her office door. The school called. "There's been an incident with the children. Nothing serious, but they're requesting you come in immediately." Victoria's heart skipped a beat. Mason and Madison were model students who had never caused any trouble. "What kind of incident?" "They wouldn't say over the phone, ma'am. Just that it's urgent and involves both children." 20 minutes later, Victoria arrived at Prestigious Academy, one of New York's most elite private schools where tuition cost more than most people's annual salary. The headmistress, Mrs. Patterson, met her in the marble-floored lobby with an expression Victoria had never seen before. Confusion, mixed with something that looked almost like fear. "Mrs. Sterling, thank you for coming so quickly. We have a very unusual situation. Your children are fine, but something has happened that we've never encountered in our 40 years of operation." Victoria followed Mrs. Patterson down the hallway, lined with portraits of distinguished alumni. What exactly happened? "This morning, during recess, 2 children appeared on our playground. They somehow got through our security, which should have been impossible. But Mrs. Sterling, these children—" Mrs. Patterson paused at the door to her office. "They look exactly like Mason and Madison. Identical in every way, except what?" Mrs. Patterson opened the door, and Victoria's world tilted sideways. Sitting in the elegant office were 4 children. Victoria immediately recognized Mason and Madison in their pristine school uniforms, looking confused and slightly annoyed. But across from them sat 2 other children who made Victoria question her own sanity. The boy had Mason's exact face, the same dark hair, the same brown eyes, even the same small scar on his chin from when Mason had fallen off his bike last year. The girl was Madison's mirror image, down to the tiny freckle on her left cheek. But these twin children looked like they had emerged from a completely different world. The boy wore a faded shirt that was too small for him, with holes at the elbows and dirt stains that suggested he had been living rough for weeks. The girl's dress was brown and patched, her hair uncombed, and both children had the hollow-cheeked look of kids who weren't getting enough to eat. "Mommy," Madison said, running to Victoria's side. "These kids look exactly like us, but they're dirty and they smell funny." "That's not nice, Madison," Victoria said automatically, but her mind was reeling. How was this possible? The poor boy stood up defiantly. "We're not dirty because we want to be. We're dirty because we don't have a fancy house like you rich kids." "Who are you?" Victoria asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What are your names?" "I'm Michael," the boy said with a proud lift of his chin. "And this is my sister Mia. We're twins, just like your spoiled kids." Mason stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "We're not spoiled. We've earned everything we have because our mom is smart and successful." "Your mom didn't earn anything," Mia spoke for the first time, her voice surprisingly strong for such a thin child. "She stole our lives." The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. "What did you say?" "Our mommy told us before she died," Michael continued, his small hands clenched into fists. "She said a rich lady took our real family away from us. She said we had a different life before, with money and food and clean clothes." Victoria's legs felt weak. This was impossible. She remembered every moment of her pregnancy, every doctor's appointment, every contraction during the 18-hour labor. She had given birth to Mason and Madison at Mount Sinai Hospital with the finest medical team in the city. "Mrs. Sterling," Mrs. Patterson said quietly, "there's something else." These children knew details about Mason and Madison that they shouldn't know. They knew about Madison's violin lessons, about Mason's fear of thunderstorms, even about the birthmark on Madison's shoulder that's usually covered by her clothes. Victoria stared at the four children, her mind racing. The resemblance wasn't just striking, it was impossible. "Where do you live?" she asked Michael and Mia. "In the shelter on East 42nd Street, Mia said. "When we can get in. Sometimes we sleep in the park." Victoria's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. "Mrs. Patterson, I need to make some calls. Please don't let anyone leave this room." The first call was to her private investigator, someone she had used for corporate espionage and competitor research. "Marcus, I need you to drop everything. I'm sending you photos of 4 children. I need you to find out everything about the 2 I'm about to identify." She quickly photographed Michael and Mia, trying to ignore how much they looked like her own children. "Their names are Michael and Mia. They claim to be living in a shelter on East 42nd Street. I need their complete history, and I need it today." The second call was much harder. She dialed Dr. Harrison, the fertility specialist who had helped her conceive the twins. "Victoria, how wonderful to hear from you. How are Mason and Madison doing? Dr. Harrison, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. During my fertility treatment, during the pregnancy, during the birth, was there any possibility of mix-ups? Any chance that other children could be involved?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Victoria, why are you asking this question? Please, just answer me." "The procedures we used were completely standard. You were implanted with 2 embryos, both created from your and David's genetic material. You carried twins to term and delivered them naturally. There was no possibility of mix-ups." But something in Dr. Harrison's voice didn't sound right. "Are you sure?" Another pause. "Victoria, I think you should come to my office. There are some things we should discuss in person." Victoria ended the call with shaking hands. Across the room, Mason and Madison were staring at Michael and Mia with a mixture of fascination and fear. The poor children sat quietly, but Victoria could see intelligence in their eyes that reminded her painfully of her own twins. "Mia," Victoria said gently, approaching the thin girl, "you said your mother told you about a rich lady who took your real family. What else did she say?" Mia's eyes filled with tears. "She said we used to have a brother and sister who lived in a big house and went to fancy schools. She said someone with lots of money made sure we couldn't be together." "When did your mother die?" 6 months ago, Michael answered. "She got sick and couldn't afford the medicine. Before she died, she made us promise to find our real family." Victoria felt the room spinning. "What was your mother's name?" "Sarah Chen," Mia whispered. "She used to work in a hospital before we were born. She said she made one mistake and it ruined everything." The name hit Victoria like lightning. Sarah Chen had been the head nurse in the fertility clinic's embryo lab. Victoria remembered her well, a quiet, competent woman who had handled many of the technical aspects of the procedure. Victoria's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, her investigator. "Found something. Meet me at your office in 1 hour. Bring the children. You're going to want to sit down for this." At her office, Marcus spread documents across Victoria's conference table while Mason, Madison, Michael and Mia sat in stunned silence. The resemblance between them was so perfect that Victoria's employees had done double takes as they entered the building. "Victoria," Marcus began carefully, "what I'm about to tell you is going to change everything you thought you knew about your family." He opened a thick folder. Sarah Chen worked at Dr. Harrison's clinic for 12 years. She was responsible for handling embryo storage and implantation preparation. According to hospital records I was able to access, something unusual happened during your treatment. Victoria leaned forward, her heart pounding. You and David weren't the only couple undergoing treatment that month. There was another couple, James and Sarah Chen. Sarah was trying to conceive using her own eggs and her husband's sperm. I don't understand. Marcus pulled out a medical document. This is where it gets complicated. Both procedures were scheduled for the same day. Both involved twin embryo implantations. But according to these records, there was a mix-up in the lab. Victoria's world seemed to be collapsing around her. What kind of mix-up? The embryos were switched. The ones implanted in you were created from James and Sarah Chen's genetic material. The ones implanted in Sarah were created from yours and David's. The silence in the room was deafening. Victoria stared at the documents, trying to process what she was hearing. So, Mason and Madison, she whispered, are biologically Sarah and James Chen's children. And Michael and Mia are biologically yours and David's. Madison started crying. Mommy, I don't understand. Are we not really your children? Victoria pulled both Mason and Madison into her arms, tears streaming down her face. You will always be my children. Always. Nothing will ever change that. But her eyes kept drifting to Michael and Mia, who sat quietly in chairs too big for them, wearing clothes too small for their growing bodies. Her biological children, who had been living in poverty while her adoptive children enjoyed every luxury imaginable. There's more, Marcus said quietly. Sarah Chen knew about the switch almost immediately. She tried to come forward several times over the years, but each time someone convinced her to stay quiet. Who? Victoria's voice was ice cold. Dr. Harrison. He's been covering this up for 6 years. Victoria stared at the 4 children who had turned her world upside down. Mason and Madison, who she had loved and raised for 6 years, and Michael and Mia, who carried her and David's DNA but were strangers to her. What happens now? She asked Marcus, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Legally, this is unprecedented. All 4 children have been placed with their biological families in terms of genetics, but Mason and Madison are legally your adopted children through the situation. Michael and Mia have been living as orphans since Sarah's death. Victoria looked at Michael and Mia, who were quietly holding hands. Despite their circumstances, they showed the same intelligence and dignity she saw in Mason and Madison. Where is James Chen? Their father? He died in a car accident when the children were 2 years old. Sarah has been raising them alone since then, working multiple jobs to survive. When she got sick 6 months ago, there was no family support system. Victoria made a decision that surprised everyone in the room, including herself. I'm taking all 4 children home. Mommy, what do you mean? Madison asked, wiping her tears. Victoria knelt down so she was at eye level with all 4 children. Mason and Madison, you are my children and you always will be. I love you more than life itself, and that will never change. She turned to Michael and Mia. And you 2 are also my children, even though we haven't known each other long. You've been living without the love and care you deserve, and I'm going to fix that. But we're not rich like them, Michael said, gesturing toward his genetic siblings. You are now, Victoria said firmly. You're all going to live together, go to school together, and be the family you were meant to be before adults made terrible mistakes. Mia looked skeptical. Why would you want us? We're dirty and poor, and we don't know how to act fancy like them. Victoria pulled Mia into a hug, feeling how thin and fragile the little girl was. Because you're my daughter. Because every child deserves love, safety, and opportunity. And because your mother Sarah died hoping someone would take care of you. Over the following weeks, Victoria hired the best lawyers, therapists, and child psychologists money could buy. She enrolled Michael and Mia in the same school as Mason and Madison, bought them new clothes, and watched as they slowly began to trust that their new life was real. But the most beautiful thing was watching the 4 children discover each other. Despite their different upbringings, they shared mannerisms, preferences, and an undeniable connection that transcended genetics. The legal battle with Dr. Harrison would take years, but Victoria had found something more valuable than justice. She had found her complete family. 4 children who taught her that love isn't determined by DNA, but by the choice to care for each other no matter what. If you enjoyed this incredible true story of family, fate, and second chances, please give this video a thumbs up and type Part 2 in the comments to hear what happened when Victoria confronted Dr. Harrison in court. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories that will restore your faith in the power of love. See you in the next one.